I would say that Emmanuel Macron is one of the most competent politicians of our time. I don't know if it's him personally or the people advising him, but he is absolutely a political genius. And I'm not saying this as a politician that is capable of bringing wealth, prosperity, and increasing the standard of living for his people. No, I'm saying as a politician that is capable of maintaining and clinging to power despite the insurmountable odds. Now, for those of you who haven't followed French politics, what happened is in the European elections, right wingers have managed to sweep significant victories, much to the shock and dismay of the left. You see, right now, the moral and cultural compass of many Western nations is not that, okay, well, we're in a democracy and now we're in power, but 4 years later, maybe the right is in power and then we switch and we keep the ideas that are good while pushing for different reforms. No. That's backward reactionary thinking. The correct moral thinking is that there is the left and then there is the far right extremists. And we need to keep the far right extremists from gaining power under any circumstance because all of their grievances are completely unjustified. Everything that the left does, all their policies are completely moral, and anyone against them is immoral. So, due to this, you can imagine the shock of not just the French politicians, but the journalists as well, when they saw that right-wingers were gaining significant grounds in the European elections. And I believe it was even the EU president, Ursula von der Leyen, which was like, don't worry, we have system in place to prevent populism from taking over. But regardless of that, Emmanuel Macron came with a very interesting plan, which at the moment no one thought he could pull it off, but he did. He called for snap elections. And by doing so, most of the political parties in France, especially the right-wing ones, were caught by surprise. You see, in a multi-party system, before entering elections, you're supposed to make alliances, you're supposed to talk with people, you're supposed to forward candidates, you're supposed to vouch for them to make sure that they're presentable. And people on the right didn't have the opportunity to do so due to how quickly the elections were being called, which means that they didn't enter the election season as prepared as they would have liked to be. But what's interesting is the next stage of the plan. You see, France, unlike America, is a multi-party system. So trying to explain this for Americans is a little bit difficult, but I think I can manage because they do have that joke called the Libertarian Party. But let's assume that the Libertarian Party was capable of getting like 10, maybe 15% of the votes in some states. And you have this election coming up and you know that the Republicans are going to sweep the nation. And the Democrats are horrified. They don't know what to do. So they're looking at some states where the Libertarian Party and the Democratic Party would have 51% of the vote. But because the vote is split between Libertarian and Democrats, then the Republicans are winning. So what the Democrats would do is they would say to their candidates, stand down. Like, we're not competing in this state. We are not forward a single candidate in this state. And the idea is that now the Libertarian Party will get the Democrats' votes. And they would manage to beat the Republicans. This is exactly what Emmanuel Macron has done. Like, there were in certain places communists, socialists, environmentalists that together with Macron's party would split the vote. So a right-winger would win. And Macron told his party members, no, we're standing down. We're not competing in this race. And due to this, the left managed to sweep the nation. So, legally speaking, it is a left-leaning victory for Macron, but culturally speaking, it is definitely not. And this is due to the fact that Macron, believe it or not, it's a centrist. And the parties that won are extremists, either extreme left or extreme right, as the press likes to call it. But what they do represent is change. People do not want more of the same, basically. They are telling Macron that, okay, we are fed up with your centrist policies. We want something different. And this is where the problem starts to happen because Macron, theoretically, has to name a person which will become prime minister and form the government. And historically speaking, it is customary and I guess like morally obliged for the president to select a member from the party with the biggest votes, because that represents the will of the people. However, Macron is now refusing to do so, and the justification from some of his allies is absolutely baffling. Like, here you have the politician by the name of Francois Bayrou. I think I pronounced it inaccurately. But he rejects the idea that there is a winner in these elections. He says those who claim there was a winner in this election know very well that they're talking nonsense. It's not true. So basically, he's like Moses coming down from the mountain with the tablets and issuing the decree. He's like the Jedi doing the mind trick, and it's like, forget the percentages, forget mathematics, there is no winner. Everything else is harmful and disturbing misinformation. His interpretation of the election result is that French democracy cannot be led by an absolute majority of the far right or extremes in general. So we have the very American mindset right now, which is that democracy represents the current political class. They are there in perpetuity, kind of like a monarchy, kind of like the aristocracy, right? Like, they are the democracy. And everything else is a threat to the democracy, even if, like, people en masse are voting for change, even if people are voting for the extremes, because the democracy has caused extreme problems and people are looking for extreme solutions right now. No. Like, the people are wrong. The people do not understand, all right? Like, if you don't vote for us, you're not voting for democracy. Whether it is the far left, whether it is the far right. And by the way, they get to decide who is far left and who is far right. It is just like this. Like, the only people you should ever vote for, the only reasonable people are the ones that are currently in power, whether it's in France, Germany, or the United States. Like, they are the only people on planet Earth capable of managing democracy, and everything else is unacceptable. So he is saying that what he calls extremes in this situation is the new Popular Front, the NPF, and the Rassemblement National, RN, which gathers 63% of the votes, right? So, like, I guess these are the extremists he's talking about. Meanwhile, his own group, again, the only ones capable of leading the country and the only ones capable of understanding and communing with democracy, only got 23% of the votes and 26% of the seats. So again, we notice, like, the same situation happening in a lot of countries where the establishment is losing popularity massively, but while they're losing in votes, they're definitely gaining in hubris and arrogance. So anyway, apparently, he has a proposal, a way out of this. And he says that there is only one thing to do in his eyes. The President of the Republic appoints a proeminent figure to form the government. This figure proposes a theme, and his team does not ask for prior agreement from the political parties, since it will never obtain it. So basically, in other words, he proposes to completely bypass the customary French system, which is that the president names someone as a prime minister from within the party with the biggest votes, and that person, with the acceptance of the Assemblée Nationale, with the agreement of the people that have been elected to represent the French population, are going to govern the nation. But what this guy is saying is like, no, you do not need the agreement of the representative of the people anymore. You just need the agreement of Macron. And Macron obviously is going to name someone that he likes. And he's not going to name just, even if it's a technocrat, even if it's like someone that's not a political person, it will still be like someone that agrees with Macron's policies and likes Macron as a person. And that's the person that's going to make the government. And they're not going to need the approval of the assembly. They can just govern by themselves. Very interesting. What can I say? As I mentioned before at the beginning of the video, I do think that Macron is one of the smartest and wisest politicians of our time. But again, he's not using that wisdom and intelligence to raise the prosperity of the average French citizen, to increase the lifestyle of his people. He's using that intelligence in order to maintain power, to do all these political machinations, which unfortunately are becoming quite prevalent in the European Union. Apparently, nowadays, democracy is all about the legality of the thing. As long as you have enough stamps, as long as you have like enough signatures in the right places and just enough legal justification to keep on going, then all is good. But it's not about the spirit of democracy, which is to actually represent what the average voter wants. In fact, what the average voter wants is probably dismissed, not something important, and it's considered populism. Right, so it's something evil. If the average voter gets what they want, that's extremism. Like, no, you need to shut down the air conditioning in the subway and make sure